NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base at Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
It's not the same as conducting some localized test for some defensive project. This is open air operations. It's not a test. This thing is in place. It didn't start until about 1996. Exactly. And, growing up my whole life, a condensation trail disappeared, the 20 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And now it can be in the summer at like 4,000 feet, and there's these big clouds behind jets. Some jets leave it behind, leave a trail behind them. Other jets at the same flight level, same altitude don't. And instead of just getting into are they spraying us or what's changed the jet fuel or what's changed the atmosphere, there are tens of thousands of declassified admissions under different programs where different Pentagon programs, different agencies of the government have tested chemical, biological, and radiological agents on the American people.
Talking about this a few years ago was extremely dangerous. Now that we have YouTube and more social networking devices, such as even Rupert's MySpace, this is really getting out in such a way that they can't control it. They must just be really, if you can use the expression, shitting themselves over this, because they can't control people now talking about the elephant in the room, what is so obvious to all of us.
There's a feeling from that area that the states doing all of these weather modification programs might not be doing it for the benefit of the citizens of Texas and other states that they may impact as well.
Well, many of the planes that we're seeing here in Abilene will actually turn whatever they're spraying on and off right before our eyes. I mean, you'll see a plane up there flying like normal, and then all of a sudden it starts spraying. We've seen them fly off into the distance and then loop around and fly back again. These are not your typical planes with a preordained path destination from city to city. Someone needs to explain to me why do they stop traveling in one particular direction and then loop around and come back again. They perform this behavior so many times that we start seeing the tic-tac-toe grids in the sky. We're witnessing the giant X's. And I mean, Rosalind, when you and I grew up, these contrails naturally dissipated in a few seconds or perhaps a minute max. But these things expand, they grow bigger, and before you know it, the entire sky is overcast.
That's correct. And they are there all day. They do loop the loop around our county and our state. We follow them at times with spotters in different areas, watching the planes loop, come back around. And we know from the FAA records that the jets from commercial airlines fly in straight lines. And coming across our county, there aren't many, and they stay mostly in certain patterns. The jets that we see leaving the Pacific jet contrails move in directions that normal jets wouldn't fly because it would use too much fuel and put them off schedule. And the jets that we see here do loops. We've got pictures of them looping the same X's and crosshatches. But I believe that some of that, not only are they looking for keeping something in the air almost all the time, but we feel that some of the markings are to mark the start and stop areas for their programs so that they can watch their experiments either from satellite or the ground.
And because they're preventing the rain from falling right here in California, anywhere on the east of the Mississippi, when it's got to rise again, they're getting rained on like hell.
Stevens, I was a television weatherman for 20 years. These chemtrails are absolutely required to impact whatever weather event they were designing. And the trails were an absolute necessary ingredient for them to achieve their weather modification goals.
Chemtrails are a key element in the whole thing because they're obviously a way of putting a highly reflective material into the atmosphere.
With cloud seeding, the cooling will be achieved by making cloud clouds reflect a bit more sunlight back to space than they would otherwise, and less sunlight reaching the surface would tend to cool the planet.
So let's say we were doing geoengineering because we wanted to make the weather a little bit better.
The more we see these trails in the sky, the less rain we get. Virtually all scientific data, even from the proponents of geoengineering, state clearly saturating the atmosphere with particulates will create drought.
Much has been made of this issue of damage from precipitation.
If the issue is understanding the climatic response, which was, I think, most of where this was going, that is exactly where the precipitation gets higher or lower.
There will be monsoon failures during that period. There will be huge hurricanes.
It's likely to cause some damage in some places.
The global studies indicate there will be some impact on precipitation patterns, and obviously there's a lot more opportunity for work in that area. Just seeding can be pretty effective for the clouds we explored, but the interactions between seeding and precipitation in the form of drizzle are really complex.
So we're finding the aerosols, the metal particulates, the weather engineering, whether it's scalar, ionic, or orgone, or the chi of the atmosphere. All of those can be used and leveraged to create weather events that are several standard deviations or outside what would be typically normal. Doing it, why they're doing it. You have to have a motive.
Weather derivatives are products that commercial hedgers would use, such as an insurance company or an energy company, to hedge risk that's associated with the weather. Precipitation or a hurricane or general heating days is what they're basically called. Certain temperatures or higher temperatures are going to associate with more energy, so they're going to want to hedge that risk. If you can structure a product where you say, okay, I'm going to buy insurance against it raining more than 10 inches in this area. If my risk is say $1 million, but I'm insuring for $10 million, then I can make it rain and collect a premium on the $10 million. Well, of course.
So the agenda was drought. The agenda was to kill the storm, at least in that one particular spot.
You're reducing the food security of people through deploying these kinds of approaches that potentially 2 billion people could have their food disrupted by such interventions.
It affects farmers by their ability to plan what they're going to be growing.
You see a tremendous and significant loss of property and crop production. Many times this will cause farms to go out of business, and when farmers go out of business, they usually have to sell, and then if there's somebody waiting in the wings to buy their land and then turn that land over to the production of genetically modified crops, you can see where there would be kind of a strategic advantage there.
The fact that it's cheap isn't necessarily a good thing at all, as I'll come to in a second. The fact that it's cheap is part of the hard problem of governance. The fact that it's cheap means any small state or even conceivably individuals could do this, and that is a very dangerous thing.
The less it rains, and wanted to know why that is.
When you put these particles into the air, because they're so small, moisture and ice crystals have a tendency to naturally gravitate towards these particles. If you heat the particles up, you can then carry the moisture to a higher altitude where the jet stream will carry it further downstream like a conveyor. So you can prevent the rain from falling where it would normally fall. That's one of the reasons.
Or make it fall.
What I find on a regular basis, the average American is deficient on all lines in this mineral ore. However, the toxic elements are extremely active, and they will take on and they'll sit on a receptor site where the normal nutrient metal should be. So as an example, aluminum will sit where magnesium should sit on the receptor site in the behavior of a cell. So the drama is, going back to a question about air filters, this is nanoparticles. This is beyond what your eye can see by 30,000 fold. This is something you cannot filter out. And yet when you breathe it, it goes straight into your nostrils. You have no defense against it. It will end up in your brain. And then as you breathe, it'll also go into your lungs. There's no defense against that. However, you do have a God-given ability to get that out. So at the final day, what you have is there a way to test if I am poisoned? And the answer is yes. The drama is your body will not allow it to stay in the bloodstream. So doing a blood test is useless. Doing a urine test is useless because your body's desperately trying to get rid of it. It'll get rid of it through, it may store in your kidneys and in your liver. Anybody want to do a kidney biopsy? No. So the most efficient inexpensive way to do things, or with clinicians who will do DMPS and DMSA challenges, which will force the cells to let it go. However, those particular procedures sometimes are toxic, and you have some difficulty with that because you're freely letting go for the first time a toxic load. For me and my house and my clinicians I work with, we use a simple hair analysis because it's an extracorporeal canal to get rid of poisons, because your skin is your third kidney. You get rid of the poisons through your liver, through your colon, through your kidneys, through your skin. And your hair just happens to be living in your skin.
The dam of silence on this issue, so many wheels will turn. So many will turn.
Let's get it on the national news.
Yes.
Expose it a la Geraldo Rivera style.
Practical effect to this, just so that you'll know, is that the more aluminum is in your body, the more sensitive you are to these fields. And what happens is we're seeing more and more people being energetically sensitive, so they can't even walk through a mall and other places or hold cell phones and whatnot, because they themselves have become. I remember when I came to Reading in '85, we only had a couple of TV stations. We put aluminum foil on the antennas. You're now the new aluminum foil.